Good afternoon. Well, it's beautiful out. A little muggy, but you can hear the birds are chirping and the sky is clear. And my neighbors are concerned about how much they can pave a road so it can be similar to a paved road rather than be a dirt road. Am I exaggerating? No, I'm not. A lot of people come out to the country and want to make it like where they left. So, for example, in Northern Virginia, they can't afford that big box in Fairfax. So they buy a big box out in the country, and then they're upset when it's dark and quiet at night and there are animals making noises. And we've had some he-men leave the area because of it. But another thing is the road. They want a paved road, but then they want to walk on it. Some do. They want to ride on it, horses. And it takes an acclimation, and most make it, but there are some holdouts. So that's my personal tale of woe. Now, going to the more national things, let's talk about January 6th Select Committee. We don't have to worry about Cipollone, I don't think, because I think his position, as perceived and probably as is that he tried to steer, by his best legal advice, this White House headed by Trump to a legal pathway. Was never comfortable with the lie that Trump had won the election and blew the whistle, but to no effect at first, with Trump thinking to go to the Department of Justice in the states and other places like that. So he probably has a lot of testimony that's useful. And, there's a question about what privilege Trump might have. Well, executive privilege runs with the president and the White House, so that's Biden. So I really think it's a non-issue. But it's a non-issue for another reason. Normally, privileges take flight if they're used to conceal a crime. So if I'm having a conversation with a client who's talking about an ongoing robbery, that conversation is not privileged. If he tells me a week ago he committed a robbery and it's over and done with, that's another story. So the White House counsel is in a bad position, I think, to fight over these things by which he has resisted appearance in the past. But he's appeared over 8 hours on Friday, and I think we can see perhaps some of his latest and greatest remarks on the hearing on Tuesday. Now that takes us to Steve Bannon. Now I've said on the air on Ari's show that you have to beware the Trojan horse. I mean, consider the timing. His trial for contempt is set, if I'm right, July 18th. The next hearing of the January 6th committee is the 12th, if that's Tuesday. I'm pretty sure that's the right date. And so he'd like to have the committee allow him to wriggle out of the prosecution by saying now, oh, I'm no longer in contempt. Well, let's roll that back. The crime was committed, and so he could still be prosecuted, in my opinion. But why do you think Trump is saying, well, I'm going to waive the privilege as to him? In other words, he's going to do something that is insignificant legally so that there's a cover story by which Bannon could appear and testify. Now, Bannon, according to Zoe Lofgren, my former boss, he's not going to get to just appear there and testify if he does go to that route. He's going to submit to a deposition like everybody else. And that will cut off probably the most dramatic way Bannon, could perhaps avoid the criminal prosecution and screw up the January 6th hearing in its final days. What a web we weave when first we seek to deceive. But Bannon and Trump, they just live in these webs, springs and wheels, deceit, dishonesty, distortion. It's pretty a devastating example for the world, for our nation, for children. I suppose there's some Boy Scout leader somewhere saying, oh, Trump is the greatest. And what is he teaching that kid? I just don't. America's in a rough place, and the standards by which we live are the way that we avoid chaos. They're the way we have respect for our institutions. It's the way that the trust permits us to do legislation and to have court decisions respected and so forth. Which takes me to another step, which is the Roe v. Wade decision. We don't have any respect for this Supreme Court. It has openly defied the principle by which decisions are made, so-called stare decisis. You look at the earlier opinion and you don't deviate from it. And they've just thrown it out the window without any good reasoning, except the political deal that they made in order to get on the court in the first place. And Biden finally said that. And now people are saying, oh, you should have said this sooner. I think when you're talking about a campaign that's going to last years, 2 weeks is not a terrible amount of time, as that's how they're gauging it. And I do think him asking for support to throw out cloture by which they could have a majority vote on the question of Roe v. Wade. But we're going to have another Supreme Court case nonetheless. And so the second thing Biden said, which makes the most sense, is we're going to the polls in November, and that's where we're going to make any difference, if we're going to make any difference at all. It's unfortunate, but it's true. In the meantime, the states and every goo-goo group, good government group in America, should be doing the following. Get buses from those states that have turned the calendar back 50 years and would abuse women by denying them their right to be let alone. Get pills to women across America who need an after morning pill. Get them contraceptives. Get prophylactics to the men. You don't have to take a position for or against sex for what an individual may choose to do that is legal, which is to have sex. I think that we should think about setting up hotels, if necessary, in those states where abortions will continue to be legal, and to have personnel staff them so that when women from other states need to have abortions, can have them. Am I making this up? No, because I remember when I was a student at Columbia, couples going down to a church in Lower Manhattan, and the church arranged for these couples to go to Louisiana, to a hotel there, where abortions were conducted. I don't think it was legal even in Louisiana. I don't know, it's a long time ago. But I do know that that was the process. Well, we need a network across America to fight what the courts have failed to do, which is to protect the individual right of a woman, her integrity, her right to be let alone, her right to have dominion over her own body. Okay. And then finally, I think we have to talk about guns. What better thing to talk about on a Sunday, God's Day? Does anybody know of any quotation in the Bible, Old or New Testament, in which it says, God wants you to have a gun and to shoot the hell up out of town? Now, there are incidents of leaders in the Old Testament that may suggest some of that. But if you look at the Sermon on the Mount, he says to turn the other cheek, something that's unnatural, certainly for an Irishman. But he goes further than that. If you remember, when they came for Jesus in the garden, according to the Bible, the soldiers came, and Peter, upon this rock shall I build my church, he cut off the ear of a soldier. And Jesus, according to the Bible, picked up the ear, put it back on his head, and told Peter and his disciples not to resist. Does that sound like a man who thinks everybody should have a gun and fight? And here's another little factoid. All those people who say the best way to handle a terrible incident is for a bad guy with a gun to be in a place with a good man with a gun. Well, how many cops and officers were there at that parade when those kids died? Anyhow, talk to you soon. Bye-bye.